Good morning and welcome to another segment of Above or Beyond Reasoning. Today, my guest is none other than Mrs. Dianna Blake Bennett, and she's the General Manager of Salada Foods Jamaica Limited. You may know Saladas for brands like Jamaica Mountain Peak Coffee and Ginger, among many others. I must share this with you. A lot of you may not know, but Dianna was named in 2019 for the period 2017-2018 as the top performing CEO in the Caribbean. And that was based on the performance of the stock of the different companies that were used in the survey. So can you imagine, we really have to say kudos there. Congratulations again, Dianna, on that achievement. So as we talk about this COVID-19 world, and there is no post-COVID-19, I hear people talking about that. It is adapting to and moving ahead with COVID-19. It's going to be around for a while. And today we focus on manufacturing. Now, Dianna, if you will, I want to start off by asking, how have you personally and your organization by extension been impacted, affected by COVID-19?
Well, Sandra, let me thank you for having me. I think it's great that we're looking at the different sectors, and I kudos to you and your team as well for taking this very innovative approach. Personally, I can say that I am very news savvy, so I started to see what was taking place in China from as early as mid-December, early January. And I started to, really think that if this thing really grows, and then you started to see pockets in Italy, what would be the outcome? So from a personal perspective, I started to read more. I, started to engage myself in what was happening elsewhere. I actually in January sat with my team and said, folks, this thing is
You were ahead of the curve, Dianna. January.
In January, to the point, and I can share candidly that, members of my team said to me, aren't you, thinking, you really think we need to go there? I met with my team and I said, guys, we have to prepare.
Yeah.
And we started to ramp up on ordering our stocks. And my theory was this, Sandra, that if China, which was now by this point on shutdown, when it opens back, it would normally, and we see this is China's normal behavior. When they open back, even after New Year, you go into shortages because they just consume so much. And we started to plan ahead in terms of ramping up, bringing in, increasing our ordering to ensure that we have raw materials to manufacture.
Okay.
And so, by February, we were in a rhythm of, pulling in more than what we would require. And that, I think, has been a game changer in the fact that we have been able to manufacture without any major challenges. And I'm not going to say that we haven't had some hiccups along the way, but in terms of having raw materials to continue to manufacture our brands, we did not face that challenge.
That's interesting, Dianna. Very interesting. I mean, I'm sure there are many companies who are looking back, and it is said that hindsight is 20/20 vision. If they had the foresight, to have done that forward planning, because they just have not been resilient in order to meet the current needs and demands because of their supply chain issues. But we will come back to that. So what is it that Salada is doing differently? Have you had to pivot? I mean, shift to what you're manufacturing, and how has COVID-19 impacted your operations for you to move in a different rhythm and a different way of being?
Well, COVID-19 has really caused us, and Sandra, in reality, manufacturing globally hasn't really changed. We still need people to come in.
Yes.
To actually utilize the machinery and make the products. With all our particular circumstances with curfews and so on, we've had to adjust how we approach manufacturing, because no longer did we have some of the hours that we would normally be accustomed to having, and we've made adjustments to ensure again that we were manufacturing. I mean, there is manufacturing output as well as there is job for the labor force. So we didn't send home anybody.
Okay.
We adjusted the timelines. So we had, you know, during things like, you know, because we are a manufacturer and covered under the Factories Act, we have been able to navigate. So we run 13-hour shifts, because once people come in, they can stay in so that we don't breach the curfew rules. We've had, unfortunately, some amount of cross-training. So when St. Catherine was locked down, we didn't necessarily need to bring people out of St. Catherine to run the operations, because we had some core people who we could pull on in Kingston. So from a management standpoint, we have my arguments to my team is I will not breach law. And so we have navigated the curfew regulations. I mean, of course, using what we have as a Factories Act to maneuver, but no real breach of law, in that we were taking people out of like St. Catherine on a whole scale, while there is a lockdown in that area. Because of course we have to look at the risks associated, because if you're doing that, then you could be you're now migrating that risk right back into the factory.
Definitely.
Which is really what we are trying to protect.
Sure.
The operations.
With these long hours, 13-hour shift, I mean, you would have had to make some changes internally in terms of accommodating persons to be on a shift that long. Normally your shift would be about half the time.
So normally we would run 3 shifts a day. So we had during that period to shut down and do 2 shifts. One that's 11 and one that's 13. And so we had to make concessions in terms of ensuring that food was available, which we would not normally do, especially on the weekends. We made changes to our transportation arrangements to ensure that nobody was working outside, or there was potential exposure for them to have to look for public transportation to go to work. So those were some of the things that we've done to navigate, you know, the whole issues of working within the curfew time.
What do you think?
Of course, like everybody else, we've done. I mean, as a food manufacturer, fortunately, we are already ahead of some of the things that people were implementing, because that's our standard. And 3 years ago, we took the bold move to SQF, which is an international safety certification, food safety certification. And that comes with its own myriad of hygiene policies and operations, which we have been doing very well at. And I tell you, my team on the SQF, they are vigilant. And so we've been able to successfully each year improve our score.
But this was not totally new for you then?
So it has, and yes, it has not been totally new, because we were operating already at a very high standard.
Okay. What do you think that manufacturing companies should be looking at now as the new normal? Because a lot has changed. So in terms of reliability and flexibility, when you look at resilience in your supply chain, you know, to avoid supply chain shocks and so on, if we look locally and in a broader global context, what should these companies be looking at as a new normal?
It's very interesting that you asked that question, Sandra, because certainly I think as a country and from a manufacturing standpoint, it really goes, this whole COVID period has really highlighted or some of our biggest risks, and that's food security. In that we do not, as a country, I really don't think we have been preparing ourselves to feed ourselves. And so that is certainly one takeaway from a manufacturing standpoint, is certainly to look at, you know, how can we improve that value chain? Because if farmers are guaranteed a a pull through of that chain right to the manufacturer, then there is some security and will engage them to want to grow more. So that is one takeaway from the manufacturing end in terms of supply chain, because we won't be experts at everything.
Right.
In terms of, and so we don't have some of the capabilities for packaging. And even in raw materials, we certainly don't at this point in time don't have enough. So it is, and something that we practice at Salad is to look for more than one supplier. You have to broaden your horizons in terms of looking for and having a steady supply or backups to your supply chain.
Yeah.
That's definitely one takeaway from this whole COVID-19 challenge. And of course, being nimble is very, very important. Agile. So our processes sometimes is what hampers our agility. How long it takes us to make a decision and to move forward with that decision is one of the things that this period has taught me certainly, and manufacturing, and of course looking forward. I think a lot of times we are so comfortable in our space that we do not look beyond what is happening now and don't see, I think we need to we live in a global economy, more so now. And I think that sight of what's happening elsewhere, we tend to be very myopic in our viewpoint, looking just at North America, but there are horizons outside of North America, and we need to broaden our scope and look at our opportunities more.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, Diana, is that, this whole concept where, this globalization, all that it was touted to be, and going for, raw material, in the place where you can find it at the lowest possible price. Possibly we now have to be looking at, cost versus resilience and trying to balance that. It's not just lowest cost, but probably closer to shore, more near shore sourcing of raw material. And as you say, multiple sources of your raw material to cover for supply chain shocks like we have never experienced before.
You are right, Sandra. That's exactly what I'm saying. And there is opportunity. I mean, we saw what the government's challenges were, and we have been looking at how can we use our capability of spray drying. How do we now, translate that into other things other than what we have been comfortable doing, which is coffee and ginger.
Right.
So those are things that are there other rhizomes, are there other products that can spray dry well, that we can utilize? I mean, so our technology gives us the capability of storage, meaning that you no longer have bulk storage because you're not bringing everything to powder, it's easy to stack. You give it shelf life. So those are things that we are working now through. I mean, that's when you look at things like even mangoes, which are abundant now, how do we take on a project like that? And that's the kind of nimbleness of thought and the nimbleness within your team to look at those potentials and see how we can, utilize them, because the way forward, this is the way forward.
Definitely. As we look at, the way forward, to just quote what you just said, how do we drive productivity, while at the same time ensuring that we're protecting the workforce? And, because you are ahead of the curve where this is concerned, maybe you could have some words of advice and caution to companies who are now just considering that, especially as the Prime Minister has announced, a general reopening and back to work come next Monday. What should companies be doing differently to ensure that we're observing social distancing? Can you even observe social distancing in a manufacturing setting? I mean, isn't the machinery and the plant set up a particular way? How do we protect our workforce, make sure they are comfortable, while at the same time we keep our stocks and inventories at the optimal level?
Well, certainly from a manufacturing standpoint, and not all manufacturing lines are the same. From Salada's perspective, we did that evaluation early as we, learned what were the challenges with COVID and how it was transmitted. And again, from our safe quality foods, we normally wear masks in our production rooms because of just the products that we do spray drying of powder, which is, very light and cause a lot of fumes, well, not fumes, powdery substance to get into your eyes and so on.
Right.
So normal operations would dictate that. All we have done is to extend that outside. So our team now wears masks right throughout the compound once you are outside. We have done things like reset our canteen. So normally a table would have 4 chairs.
Right.
We now have 2 chairs. You can only sit, and we've removed some of the chairs. We've removed some of the tables so that there is that social distancing. In our packaging rooms, that's also one of the things. We have three at most 4 persons within the room, which is within that they're already masked, and then the distance between them is at minimum 3 feet. So there is that. But those are the things that manufacturers need to look at. How do you retool your plant now to facilitate that kind of social distancing? From the administrative point of view, as the Prime Minister has announced, back to work, I have done, we've started now to take on doing surveys so people can be more candid in their responses. And we've sent out surveys because we had from early on moved to a 3-day in, 2-day out work week for our administrative team where we
supply so you're putting in the flexible work arrangement already?
Well, we are living that. We have been living that for at least 2.5 months. And do we need to come back? Those have been my questions to my team. Give me your feedback. Because the virus isn't gone anywhere. And we need to, again, as you rightly say, protect our workforce. Do we need to do that? One of the things I have found as we have worked outside of office and inside at varying, because everybody has a different schedule to mitigate how many people are in the office. One of the things that I have found is, I have found some amount of disconnectivity within the team. And one of my survey questions is, how do we now keep that connectivity? Because team dynamics is important in terms of getting results. And if there is disconnectivity, how do we? And one of the suggestions, has been to have more management meetings via Zoom so that we're all connected. Another one came up that said, do we play games, have a certain time where we do team games using Zoom as one of the ways to keep it connected? Because, Zoom has become a new way of life, or GoToMeeting, those platforms have become ways of life. But you also become inundated by having 10 Zoom calls in a day. How do you make change that so that it becomes now a fun aspect and you build
bring in the lighter side of work, because we don't want to leave that out. The water cooler chats, the conversation in the lunchroom that you tend to lose when you're working remotely. We actually now have to build those in. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. And the care part of it, to ensure we're just checking up on people to find out, how are you doing?
Of course, yes.
Children at home and other, responsibilities. It's just not just the work alone. There are other things too.
Yeah, it's not just work alone, right?
Exactly.
But also when you do team games, you also build team dynamics. And so it translates into work.
Definitely.
But certainly a positive feedback from the whole experience is that work-life balance. With kids being home, how do we facilitate that? And so working from home does foster that a little better. And has the output been affected? Not in it has not been across the board a wholesome, productive way, because people have varying challenges.
Yes.
But certainly what came out of the survey is that, more people are inclined that it does give a better balance to work from home.
Definitely.
And as we move into this new normal, those are going to be critical components.
Yeah. Your overall productivity and your targets and so on, how have those been impacted positively or negatively? Have you seen an uptick in demand for what you offer to the market? Some persons are on the other side where, they took their production operations offline because the demand had gone down so low or became non-existent, or they had to pivot into new areas and that sort of thing. What advice would you give to persons who, what they manufacture either is not in demand or the demand is now low? How do they pivot? And the first part of the question was, if your productivity has been impacted positively or negatively.
So for us, it's a mixed bag in terms of productivity and sales. So productivity, we haven't stopped producing. So the factory goes on. But in terms of our sales, that has been a mixed bag. We have seen that our domestic market has been slowing. And we know why. We've lost so many jobs in the hotel sector, and just a general shuttering of persons in space have really slowed our demand of products locally. But with that said, we're also seeing an uptick in the use of our ginger products.
Of course.
As people try to boost
every
immunity.
morning and every evening I'm having my ginger tea.
Exactly. So it's a mixed bag. Fortunately, we have seen that our exports have been holding steady.
Okay.
And for that, we are truly grateful, But it's a mixed bag, as I said before. Yeah. What do you do? And like Salada, we're thinking we have to think now outside of the box as manufacturers. So your core business is no longer your core, but is there an opportunity to develop a new core? And so, from my perspective, Sandra, I have looked at, things that will not go away as this becomes our new normal. So things that are that offer sanitation, food that is prepackaged, ready to use, are new normals, because people are going to be working from home. There's less time. There's going to be more home cook, but you want easily prepared things. Medical supplies are going to be a new way of normal. And so each manufacturing entity needs to look at, what your kids, similar to what we have been doing, is what is your inherent capability? Because a lot of times we don't look at our business from our inherent capability standpoint. Yeah. What do we inherently do? So people will say we manufacture sugar, but is that really it? Is it that you are a boiling company? Because before you get to the final product, you boil stuff.
So you could boil anything.
So you could boil anything. And so that's so your inherent capabilities is really what you need to focus on. What is it? And to look at what you really are good at. So am I a good packer of things? Can I take in contract just to pack? As we look at new shifts in business and demand. So those are important things that manufacturers, and I think every business, need to look at. I looked at Ford. Who would have thought that Ford, as a car manufacturer, really has the inherent capability of making ventilators?
Exactly.
And so those are the things that we need to look at from a manufacturing standpoint. What is our inherent capability?
So it seems to me now that, manufacturers have to put on their creativity hat, Diana. It's not just about the machinery and the tools and the processes, but no, we have to step back and rethink, reimagine, and recreate everything to adapt to this new world.
Adapt to this new world, yes.
Because there are opportunities. In every crisis, you're going to have winners and losers, and we can choose if we become winners.
For real, Sandra, that's exactly what it is. You decide. And one thing that I have been, even with my own children now, preaching that, yes, initially you go through this, having never experienced this before, is you go through fear. The longer you stay in fear is the likelihood that you will fail.
Correct.
So if you step out and recognize quickly that this is a new way, and you do all the things, we will never ever be able to protect ourselves wholeheartedly from ever getting it. But if you mitigate your risks, which is really how you should
That's operate, all you can do where risk is concerned.
That is all. You need to just look at your risk factors and you mitigate your risk. and step out of fear, and what I call step into favor.
Okay, I like that. What should Jamaica be doing now in a broader context? I mean, it's a whole new world. What should Jamaica really be doing now in preparation for this new normal, which is upon us? I mean, when we look at infrastructure, we look at the way we do business, we look at how many persons who we have who are probably unbanked. We look at our government structures, how many places you have to go in person to get business done. I mean, give me your perspective, Dianna, on what should Jamaica really be spending time, effort, investment on, whether public or private sector, so that we will not be left behind, but can actually benefit from this new normal?
Well, Sandra, that's a big question because there are so many angles to look at it from. But let us just focus a little bit on, you know, how we do business. I think we're behind for a country that has the kind of internet, or I may not say this right, capabilities. We are one of the first adapters. I mean, if we look at ourselves from a regional standpoint,
So in terms of the reach of internet and the bandwidth and so on that we have quite a few persons who have access. So our level of access, the density of access in some areas are quite high. Granted, it is very low in some rural areas.
I do know that in some rural areas, but certainly in our more urban cities, there is. And every rural area, if you know Jamaica, and I'm a country girl, so even if you live in Moko, you still have to go to Maypen to the business.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I think that we need to do, and even as I think about school, is to move us to more online kind of platforms. So yes, I worked for a number of years in the credit union movement and know that there is a huge number of Jamaicans that are unbanked. But the technology is now mobile money. Everybody have a cell phone.
Yes.
Why is it we have not built that platform out so that we would have captured more of our unbanked using? So that's what Haiti thrives on. Digicel went there and did their mobile money, and they thrive on it. Yeah. Everybody now is a part of the banked community using their mobile phones. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is certainly an opportunity for us. Another opportunity for us is really to now look at our agricultural sector.
Yes.
And I've been saying this forever, that we can't do everything well. We don't have the resources. So we need to channel our resources to what we can do very well.
Is it time maybe for us to probably consider going in the other direction as against globalization, to look at protecting some local industries, so protecting some local sectors, because at the end of the day, you know, we are dependent on ourselves. We had a situation the other day. I mean, big countries were actually prohibiting the export of critical
of their products
that were needed. I mean, is that a wake-up call for us that, you know, we can't buy everything and issue an import license for everything?
It is a wake-up call, but also, Sandra, look at the other side. It was an opportunity. We saw manufacturers export toilet paper to the United States. Yes. That never happened before. So there is room. The global perspective is still important, because I do believe that one of the ugly things that have risen out of COVID-19 is selfishness. And I think we need to, as a world, as a people, step past that, because we're all in it together. And that is true. So yes, there is the opportunity, especially from agriculture. And why I say we need to get smart about it is to channel our resources so that we can gain economies of scale to become competitive. And so instead of trying to grow ackee, yam, banana, we just grow ackee and grow it so well that our agricultural sector benefits from the economies of scale of growing that so well. And so we would be known for we are known for, and this is just my example, we are known as the ackee country. in addition to tourism. And then there is that, and a segue, because is tourism really sustainable?
That's the important point, because sometimes it's not about just tweaking. Sometimes it's about going back to the drawing board and recalibrating and redesigning everything. It's throwing the rule book through the door.
Exactly. But then it just goes this the whole fallout in tourism and what it has done to our foreign exchange or economy. It says that government now needs to look at some balancing act. Do we give some of those incentives that were always given to tourism industry, to our hotels, and so do we offer some of those things to manufacturers so that if there is ever a worse fallout than COVID, or another black swan, as they call it, turns up, we would have some amount of resilience elsewhere? Is it that we put some other incentives into agriculture to grow scale? Because those are some fundamental things that we need to really, as a country, look at. How do we grow scale?
Critical.
How do we grow scale? How do we provide balance in industry, whereas dependency on one, and we have always been dependent. I mean, we are coming from banana to sugar to tourism. We have always had our one-trick pony. How do we know,
which
as a
really
country,
exposes us, and
exactly,
it leaves us vulnerable.
It leaves us vulnerable. So now is the time for us to really lose our selfishness, because I think we get very selfish when we talk about our particular industries, but to lose our selfishness as
and
a
look
country,
at the greater good,
and
what
look at the
benefits
greater
the
benefit,
collective.
and how do we sustain the generations behind us, because we have now that opportunity to shape what Jamaica will look like in years to come.
Excellent. Just if I were to just recap, I mean, some excellent points here, Diana. I'm seeing where agriculture has to be a mainstay going forward. Food security has to be. We also have to rethink, and look at what really is core. And sometimes we just need to let go of what was and create what is to be. Even not knowing, we don't have to have all the information, and we will not. We have to march forward in spite of uncertainty.
Certainly.
We can't wait until we have all the data points connected.
No.
So
by that time the game would have left us.
Exactly. You talk about looking at our inherent capabilities. What else can we do in terms of food manufacturing to ensure food security? Look how much land we have that's idle. Some full time we do something about that. You spoke about supply chain and how we have to ensure that we build into our supply chains, resilient to shock, resilient to things like that, so that our operations are not negatively impacted. And you also mentioned looking at protecting staff, ensuring that not just keeping the production going, but ensuring that people are comfortable, whether they are working in the factory or whether they are working remotely, and to ensure that productivity is at a high level while we do all of that and maintain some sort of work-life balance. I think this was really excellent. There's one other thing I want to ask you, Diana, that didn't come out in our conversation. With all of the talk about artificial intelligence and robots taking over manufacturing and so on, we seem to have had a bit of a problem over the past couple months because workers could not come out to work. They had to stay home. Was that overhyped? I mean, what do you think of the way forward that, all jobs would go because robots would take over and so on and so forth? I mean, what has COVID shown us?
Sandra, a very interesting viewpoint. I do believe that AI has a place, and maybe not necessarily in the manufacturing floor as you would have described, but AI certainly could help in terms of monitoring people, as we try to reduce the risk of and spread of COVID. We have seen them using drones to check temperature and so on. I do believe that there is some amount of opportunity for that, but I do believe that the human element will always remain. I step back to the days, I'm old enough to remember when computers were big as a room.
Yes.
And I've watched where computers have gone. And at the time, it was touted that computers are going to take over the world. They quite have not. And I don't think that AI quite will. I
Well,
think
I
there is
think that we can be comfortable and confident that we're going to be needing humans for a very long time.
very long time. Right. I
Diana,
mean, look
thank
at,
you so much. This has
sure.
been truly refreshing, very insightful. I'm sure our
Thank you for
listeners
having me.
will benefit quite a bit from that. I just want to take the opportunity to wish you and Salada all the best for the future. Continue doing what you're doing. Continue to be a strong female lead and a strong female voice out there. You know,
Thank you, sir.
we have to big that up. It doesn't happen enough. And you know, we just wish you all the best and your team. Continue to do what you're doing. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And likewise, woman to woman, big up, girl. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.